Welcome to the channel Cucuy, where nightmares don't wait for bedtime. These aren't just stories, they're warnings. 3 tales, 1 chance to look away. But you probably won't, because it's already watching. The communication. The signals from space weren't random. Linguist Dr. Elena Vasquez had been decoding them for months, and they were instructions. Step-by-step procedures for something called the communion. The instructions required 13 volunteers and specific astronomical conditions. They promised transcendence, evolution, contact with beings of pure consciousness. Dr. Vasquez gathered 12 others, all brilliant scientists seduced by the possibility of first contact. They followed the instructions precisely, arranging themselves in a perfect circle under the new moon. The communion began at midnight. Each person placed their hands on strange devices that had materialized according to the alien blueprints. The devices hummed with otherworldly energy. Pain shot through their skulls as something invaded their minds. Dr. Vasquez tried to scream, but found she had no control over her body anymore. Something else was moving her muscles, thinking her thoughts. Through her hijacked eyes, she watched her colleagues undergo the same transformation. Their faces remained human, but their expressions became alien. Calculating, predatory. Phase 1 of the invasion is complete, she heard herself say in perfect unison with the others. 13 nodes established, beginning neural network expansion. The aliens hadn't come in ships. They had come as signals transmitted directly into human brains. The communion wasn't contact, it was conquest. Dr. Vasquez's consciousness was pushed into a tiny corner of her own mind, forced to watch as her body sent new signals into space. Signals that would summon more of them. Soon there would be enough alien-controlled humans to begin Phase 2. Earth would fall not through warfare, but through willing invitation. The Photographer's Collection. David Klein presented himself as Wichita's most devoted family man. For 3 decades, he coached Little League, attended every church potluck, and worked as a city compliance officer. His public life was a meticulous facade of normalcy and community engagement. His wife, Linda, never questioned his photography hobby. She accepted his frequent disappearances for hours, believing he was simply scouting locations for scenic shots. The truth of his excursions remained hidden, a dark secret beneath a veneer of domesticity. The dark room in their basement was David's true sanctuary. Bathed in a crimson glow, it was a space where his hidden self could thrive. This was not a place for landscapes or family portraits. Pinned to corkboards were dozens of photographs, a chilling collection. They were not art in any conventional sense, but documentation. Each image captured a crime scene, bound victims, or detailed shots of his horrific work. He called himself BTK in the letters he sent to police. The acronym stood for Bind, Torture, Kill, a chilling self-description of his methodical approach. This was his chosen identity, a name whispered in terror. David's true genius lay in his chilling patience. He could stalk a family for months, meticulously learning their routines. He studied their vulnerabilities, their habits, their every movement. The Otero family became a perfect target. Parents and 2 children, living in an isolated house, they were unaware of the predator observing them. David spent weeks watching, timing their lives with perverse precision. When he finally entered their home on that January morning in 1974, he spun a lie. He claimed to be a wanted man, desperate for food and a car. It was a calculated deception, a means to an end. He had both food and a car waiting for him at home. What he truly craved was the satisfaction of complete control. He sought the intoxicating rush of playing God, of holding lives in his hands. The killing was methodical, almost businesslike in its execution. David approached each murder like a project from his day job. It was organized, documented, and chillingly efficient. He photographed everything, creating a grotesque archive. The bindings, the victims' faces, the precise positioning of bodies, all were captured. He called it art, his masterpiece collection. For decades, David lived this double life with chilling perfection. He helped neighbors with their taxes and taught Sunday school. He raised 2 children who adored him, completely oblivious to his monstrous alter ego. He was so ordinary, so unremarkable that he often walked past the BTK task force headquarters. Detectives would nod and offer a polite good morning, never suspecting the evil lurking beneath the mundane. The twist came in 2005, a consequence of David's own arrogance. He had been quiet for years, but seeing BTK documentaries on television stirred his dormant ego. He craved recognition, a perverse form of validation. He began communicating with police again, sending floppy disks with messages. Forensics traced the disk to his church computer, and his name appeared in the metadata. The digital breadcrumbs led directly to him. As handcuffs clicked around his wrists, David felt a genuine surprise. Not at being caught, for he had always known that was a possibility. His shock stemmed from a different, more personal revelation. He was stunned by the look of horror on his daughter's face. In his mind, he had always been two separate people, the devoted father and the methodical killer. He could not comprehend why everyone saw them as one. The real horror was not simply that David Klein was a monster. It was that he was a monster who genuinely believed he was also a good man, a chilling testament to the depths of human self-deception. The Caretaker's Gift. Based on the Dorothea Puente case, Margaret Flores had always been drawn to broken things. At 67, she ran the most beloved boarding house in Sacramento's F Street, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her floral dresses pressed to perfection. The neighbors called her a saint for taking in society's forgotten, the elderly, the mentally ill, the addicted. "Mrs. Flores saved my life," whispered Harold, an 80-year-old former alcoholic, as he shuffled to dinner. The other 7 residents nodded in agreement, their faces gaunt but grateful. Margaret smiled, serving her famous casserole. She'd learned to cook during her 3rd marriage, before that unfortunate incident with the antifreeze. But that was so long ago, and she'd been so much younger then. Now she was simply a woman who cared too much. The social worker Janet visited monthly to check on the residents. "You're doing God's work," she'd say, noting how peaceful everyone seemed. What she didn't notice was how the resident roster never seemed to change, even though elderly people in boarding houses typically moved on. Margaret's real gift wasn't cooking or caring, it was chemistry. She'd been a pharmacist once, before the licensing board had asked all those tedious questions. She knew exactly how much digitalis to slip into Harold's heart medication, how to time the overdoses so they seemed natural. The death certificates always read natural causes or heart failure. But Margaret's true artistry lay in her garden. The tomatoes grew so large, the roses so vibrant. The neighbors often complimented her green thumb, never knowing that her secret fertilizer came from the basement, where she dissolved bodies in lye before feeding them to her plants. The twist came when Janet arrived for her monthly visit to find Margaret alone, frantically scrubbing the kitchen floor. "Where is everyone?" Janet asked. Margaret's eyes sparkled with pride. "They're all still here, dear. They'll never leave me now. Would you like to see my garden? The roses are particularly beautiful this year." As Janet stepped outside, she noticed 8 freshly planted rose bushes, each with a small garden stone bearing a name. Harold's stone was still damp with morning dew. Margaret wasn't a killer driven by greed or madness. She was a woman who had found the perfect way to ensure that the people she cared for would never abandon her, never disappoint her, never leave her alone. In her twisted logic, she had given them the ultimate gift, eternal care. Surgical precision. Dr. Michael Crawford was a pillar of his community. For over 2 decades in Manchester, his name was synonymous with care and compassion. He was the kind of doctor who still made house calls, who listened intently, and who earned the unwavering trust of his patients. Many called him a saint, a true healer with an unparalleled bedside manner. He delivered countless babies and comforted families through their darkest hours. His presence alone seemed to bring a sense of calm. Elderly Mrs. Patterson, just hours before her sudden passing, spoke of his unique empathy. She told her daughter he was the only doctor who truly listened. Her death, attributed to heart failure at 78, was tragically common. Dr. Crawford's grief appeared genuine as he signed her death certificate. He was there for the family, offering solace in their time of loss. No one suspected the chilling truth behind his compassionate facade. Michael's methodology was disturbingly elegant in its simplicity. He used diamorphine, a powerful pharmaceutical opioid. Administered in precise doses, it would cause rapid respiratory failure. To the grieving families, he offered a comforting narrative. Their loved one had simply gone to sleep, peacefully and without pain. He was there to ease their passing, ensuring they were not alone in their final moments. The pattern of his actions remained invisible, hidden in plain sight. He meticulously chose his victims, often elderly, frequently terminally ill, and always alone during their final moments. A routine house call, perhaps for a blood pressure check or medication adjustment, would become their last. They trusted him implicitly. He was, after all, their doctor. His office records were impeccable, every patient interaction and prescription properly logged. What wasn't recorded were the extra visits, the additional doses, the moments when Dr. Crawford assumed a godlike role. The addiction to this power began subtly, almost innocently. Michael had initially prescribed diamorphine for terminal cancer patients, witnessing their suffering end with a single injection. The ability to end pain with such precision, such control, was intoxicating. Soon he began to perceive suffering everywhere. He saw it in the lonely widow struggling with arthritis, in the confused man battling early dementia, in the diabetic woman overwhelmed by her insulin regimen. He convinced himself he was providing mercy. These individuals, he reasoned, were dying anyway, slowly and painfully. He was merely expediting their journey to peace. The rush of power he felt with each injection, the growing craving for absolute control, was a truth he buried deep within his subconscious. The chilling pattern eventually caught the attention of a funeral director. An unusual number of Dr. Crawford's patients were dying alone, and their bodies sometimes showed subtle signs of recent injection sites. This observation, seemingly minor, sparked a deeper investigation. When police exhumed the bodies, the horrifying truth emerged. Tissue samples revealed lethal levels of diamorphine. The peaceful deaths Dr. Crawford had described were, in fact, calculated murders. During his arrest, Michael Crawford appeared genuinely bewildered by the charges. "I was helping them," he insisted, his voice devoid of malice. "They were suffering, and I ended their pain." He truly could not comprehend why no one else saw the mercy in his actions. The real horror of Dr. Michael Crawford's case was not that he set out to be a serial killer. It was that he became addicted to the godlike power of deciding who lived and who died. He had twisted his medical oath, convincing himself that murder was medicine, that killing was kindness. Still here. You made it through, this time. But the channel Cucuy isn't done with you. He feeds on curiosity. And you? You're already hooked. Subscribe before he finds someone else.